Hi, folks. Welcome back to Never on the Back Foot podcast. I know this is our second live in the week, but then it's just been that kind of a week where there's just been so many updates, and the enthusiasm is clearly high. In this particular episode, we will be looking at the Indian squad, announced for the ICC Men's T20 World Cup 2026. And I think one thing we all can agree on is that it did spark a lot of debate, right? I think right from the overall team composition, the leadership choices, certain exclusions. This episode is basically here to, sort of break it down and understand where the selectors were coming from. I obviously have Surya joining me. He obviously comes in with like a wealth of knowledge. It kind of just made sense, for us to collaborate, sit, and just break down the squad as much as possible, right? So, Surya, yeah, hi. First things first, how are you doing? And looking forward to this discussion.
Hi Neha, thank you so much for having me on your show once again. Really excited about this, and yeah, I mean, it's pretty apt, I guess, that you've had two lives this week because we're talking of Boxing Day week anyway. There's just cricket from dawn until dusk and beyond dusk probably. So yeah, I mean, if you were to sit and probably watch every game, I don't think you'd get a couple of hours of sleep, or you'd probably get a couple of hours of sleep at best. So that's the kind of season. So pretty fitting in that sense, and yeah, really looking forward to this discussion too.
Yeah, honestly, I think fan fatigue has been at its peak, right? With just the amount of cricket that's going on. Not that we're complaining largely. I think we just pick and choose whatever's happening. But what's been, I think, amongst everyone's attention is India's squad itself, right? So let me probably just start off by asking you your first thoughts on the squad. Like, was it on expected lines? Were you expecting something different, maybe?
I'd say yes and no in the sense I watched the press conference live, and the first thing that struck me was when the names were being read out, Shubman Gill's name wasn't part of it. And I sat for the press conference, when I opened the stream, thinking that whatever 15-member squad was picked for this series against South Africa is what they're going to say Control C, Control V2, and pick the same for the World Cup because they've been winning. But the moment I heard vice captain against Akshar Patel's name, that's when I realized, okay, they've actually taken a call and they've dropped Gill, and I was shocked. So I was shocked because I did not see it coming. In saying that, I do feel that they've made the right call. As popular a decision as it may not be. I mean, his selection wasn't popular in the first place. Now, dropping him isn't very popular. So that's the thing about selection. It's a thankless job. You can't really satisfy everyone. But I think overall, they've picked a very, very, very good squad. And this team has been on a roll. Factor this since August 2023, India have not lost two T20s on the bounce. They've won just about everything. I guess they lost in West Indies in 2023 August. After that, they've not lost at all. They've obviously won the World Cup, and then they've just that juggernaut has just rolled on. Obviously, they've had some new players come in. Some veterans hanging up their boots, but it's this team only looks even more lethal than what we probably put out on the park in 2024. Dare I say? And they've been playing that brand of cricket as well. So overall, I think majority of the squad picked itself, and I thought the one or two players who were left out too would have picked themselves, but the selectors clearly went in a different route, and I must say it was a courageous call because you could have so easily taken the easy decision and just said we've been winning and we're doing a good job, no reason to tinker with it, but you've actually made a decision which you feel would probably serve you and in the better interest of the team. So well done to them for that. And yeah, I mean, I do have certain things to pinpoint in terms of where perhaps the team can be better. But overall, I think majority of the squad picked itself. So I'm not very surprised in that sense. The ones who did not make it, that did surprise me, yes. Simply because I didn't see it come.
Yeah, Surya, I think all fair points there because, as you rightly said, the squad literally picks itself, right? This is the same core group that has been doing incredibly well ever since that T20 World Cup 2024 triumph, where the whole sort of transition happened. But I think, yeah, like the points you brought in, we will discuss through the course of our discussion as well. But again, just trying to understand it from the selectors' POV too, right? I mean, picking a squad for, a T20 World Cup or any ICC event, let alone even a bilateral series, does come with like a lot of scrutiny itself, right? But what do you think was the kind of team that the selectors were trying to pick? Because the common sentiment is that, hey, India has the potential to, pull off a double, and this is a World Cup that's, happening on home soil. Do you think the team has the chance to pull off something special, courtesy, the selectors trying to build this sort of a team?
Well, of course, if India do pull it off, they'd be, creating history of their own, because no team has ever won on home soil and no team has ever defended its title as well in the T20 World Cup, or in the men's T20 World Cup at least. And I think this is as good a chance as any team has ever had to be able to buck that trend. So I think they most certainly can do it. But if you were to talk about India's squad and the selectors' purview, I think they quite clearly looked at ticking off three boxes. One is try and bat deep, blow the opposition away on sheer weight of runs and with power. Secondly, would be to cover enough options in terms of spin, because when you're playing in the subcontinent, you want as many options of spin as possible. That's why they also took an extra spinner to the West Indies last year when they played the World Cup there. And once they moved out of the New York leg and went into the West Indies, they started playing Kuldeep Yadav ahead of Mohammad Siraj. So they picked an extra spinner. And thirdly, I think it's also to give the captain enough options to be able to maneuver around. So you can make horse for course picks based on conditions, or can have enough options, be it in terms of how flexible you are with your batting order, or how many options you want with the ball. If you want someone else to chip in instead of one of your frontline bowlers, maybe an extra spinner, you have a couple of part-timers who can roll their arm over too. So in that sense, I think they've ticked off these boxes and there's not really a lot of room to complain about.
Yeah, that's true because besides, the few omissions, I think largely people were satisfied, with the squad selection because a lot of good performances were rewarded. In fact, even Ishan Kishan, getting selected was something that was highly praised, right? Because he does come in offering that cushion as a backup opener, as a backup wicket keeper as well, which is definitely great. And even when you just look at the squad at last, Surya, like it does reflect like a clear T20 philosophy. You have hard hitters, you have a very deep batting lineup, the bowling attack is shaping up really well. But then again, for you, was it like a proper, T20 philosophy type side, or did it just feel like a compromise, between roles and reputations?
I wouldn't say it was a compromise. I do believe that they've picked this side keeping in mind a clear T20 philosophy, because they've been picking specialists in this format for a while now. If you cast your mind back to say 10 or 12 years ago, now between the 2012 T20 World Cup and the 2014 T20 World Cup, India played a grand five games and one T20 in 2013. So their ODI players would end up playing T20s because you never pick specialists, even though the IPL was beyond its nascent stage, you never pick T20 specialists. But the story is different now. You have more T20 cricket being played. So that incentivizes picking specialists. And you look at the number of players in this team who are actually T20 specialists and who probably don't play any other format. I mean, you take Abhishek Verma, there's Tilak Verma. I mean, yes, he's been picked in the ODI side too, but he largely plays in the T20 11. Shivam Dubey, Varun Chakravarti, after the Champions Trophy, he's not been playing ODIs. And the captain himself, Surya Kumar Yadav. So that's a third of the squad at least. And Sanju Samson, if I can throw in that name too. So that's 40% of the squad that's who are only T20 specialists. So they are definitely picking players who they feel are better suited to the format, and they're picking them for a specific role. That's precisely why you brought up Ishan Kishan. It's the proverbial case of one stone and two birds. So he locks in a backup opener and a backup wicket keeper, and for whatever reason it is, you can only pick 15 in an ICC squad. I still do not understand why it cannot be made 16. But when you've got that, and I mean, India being a home team to realize that they need to have a backup keeper, my heart does go out to Jitesh Sharma because I don't think he's done anything wrong. I don't see why he could not have been picked as a specialist batter who can finish the innings. He's not been given enough of an opportunity anyway to make his case. But with Kishan, obviously, I think the only other option perhaps outside that would have been to go back to KL Rahul, perhaps. Someone who can be a backup opener and a keeper, but they've decided to reward Kishan's form in the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy. And I hope it comes off, because I do feel there are certain aspects in his game when it comes to, say, spin or even high pace, where he can get tied down. So, and I'm going to take his returns in the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy with a slight pinch of salt, simply because I think the step up to international cricket is much higher, and he's not necessarily lit up the IPL consistently in the last few years, consistently being the keyword. So there's been flashes of brilliance. So whether he's actually put in work on his weaknesses behind the scenes or not, we'll only know when he plays New Zealand next month. And I really hope he does play New Zealand too, because you don't want him to directly go into a World Cup. You want him to play a few games, even if Samson is your first choice keeper. And but apart from that, again, I can see the rationale behind his selection and why the selectors have gone that route. And I think Ajit Agarkar explained that as well. They just realized that the keeper needed to be an opener. And if, God forbid, something happens to Sanju Samson, Kishan comes in as a direct replacement there without tinkering around with the batting order elsewhere.
Yeah, which I think was a fair call and something, which clearly showed that there was foresight in that sort of thinking as well. But Surya, again, just looking at the overall balance of the squad, right? Let's look at the parameters of batting depth, all rounders, and just the kind of bowling options that are available and at disposal. Like, how confident are you, that, hey, this is a team that's actually got a lot of areas, right? Or are you still thinking that, hey, there are chinks in the armor which could potentially get exposed come the super sixes stages or possibly the latter stages?
Look, I think from the point of view of balance, again, as I said, batting until eight at least, having enough bowling options, and ensuring you have those power hitters in those positions. I think they've ticked off those boxes. You really cannot complain a whole deal. As I said, there are some concerns. Now, if you play both Shivam Dubey and Akshar Patel in the same playing 11, one of them is going to end up batting out of position because I know Akshar is basically the Sankat Mochan of this team because every time they lose three wickets early, Akshar goes up. But Shivam Dubey ends up batting in the second half, and that's not necessarily the best entry point for him. So someone or the other ends up batting out of position, and that is the one thing I have a big sort of issue with because I don't think Akshar or Dubey are both really the kind of players who you think can come in the back end with just 2 or 3 overs left and start hitting against pace from the word go. But outside that, they've got all their options covered, and I do feel that I'm a little skeptical on one thing, which is that in recent times, unfortunately, India have become very Abhishek Sharma reliant with the bat. If I can say that, it might sound an exaggeration, but look, the truth is that uh, their bowlers have bailed them out, and when their bowlers have been able to restrict the opposition, the batting woes don't necessarily surface. So you don't have a whole lot to do. But otherwise, if you're setting a target on a flat pitch, again in Ahmedabad in the last T20, you saw Sanju Samson gave you that start with Abhishek Sharma, and then that allowed Tilak to do his bit, Hardik Pandya to do his bit. But otherwise, if Abhishek gets out early, it does raise a bit of a question mark because Surya Kumar's form has been a concern. They've tried to address it by going back to the Abhishek Sanju Samson combination at the top and taking that call on Shubman Gill. But outside that, I think they also have players who just know how to absorb pressure and turn up. I mean, you take Tilak Varma, for instance, in that innings in the final of the Asia Cup. Um, he's got his limitations, against spin. He tends to play the sweep and the reverse, premeditates a little too early. Body on line, high pace, much like Kishan again. Some similarities there in terms of how they can get tied down. The same can apply to Shivam Dubey too. So you're talking about quite a few players with uh, say chinks in their armor which the opposition can plan for. But I do believe that these players also know how to absorb pressure and step up. And so often when it comes to the big stage, it's about pressure. You don't see so many high scoring finals, for instance. It could be a used pitch, it could just be nerves kicking in at times. And that's when so often it comes down to who holds his nerve or who blinks first. And I think India have those players who you might say it's a young squad, but I think they're experienced enough in terms of the volume of games they've played and the number of high pressure situations that they've been thrown into that they're probably battle hardened and ready enough to encounter that come the World Cup. So I do think that they've ticked off more or less every box in the squad.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you on this aspect that most of the players, they've been in such high pressure situations in not just domestic matches, right? The IPL itself, which is of comparable quality with international cricket, where situations have really brought out the best from them. And hopefully, this World Cup too, we will sort of see that. Utsav goes on to say that absolutely agree with the Abhishek Sharma reliance point. Surya has to step up. I will, bring up the
I saw
Surya
Surya
point.
as a step up and I just thought I wasn't being clear enough. Maybe I thought it was a reference to me. Just kidding. But yes, I
Yeah.
agree. I think Surya Kumar, hopefully the best is coming in the World Cup. Much like Rohit Sharma
Honestly.
last year, because there were questions over Rohit Sharma's form too, heading into the 2024 T20 World Cup. He had a brilliant campaign. And I hope Surya can do something similar.
Yeah, hopefully, the big match, big situation sort of, brings out the best from Surya Kumar Yadav and we get to see a resurgence, right? So many people have been questioning his place in the squad, which is really sad. And this is his first, ICC event as a captain, right? So it comes in with that additional sense of responsibility too. But we will talk about Sky a little later in our conversation. Sportsman also goes on to ask us, "Hi guys, will Rinku and Kuldeep be in that starting 11?" So I'll throw this question to you. Again, I'd save the team combinations bit for a little later, but then again, to just give a trailer probably to our ardent listeners right now, your early call on this one?
Do I just leave it as a suspense since we are going to come to it later? I'd say one of them will start. Maybe who is that? Maybe I'll just reveal it later if I can say so. I mean, it's not as though I have any inside scoop, but I'm just foreseeing what India's 11 could be. But yeah, I think very valid question because I think neither of them has necessarily nailed down a spot, and it's not because they're not good enough, but it's just because of the combination that the team is playing. But I feel India will start with just one of these two, and once we get to the team combination, probably I'll touch upon that.
Interesting one there, Surya. Just dropping an Easter egg and giving our listeners an incentive to stay till the end. But thank you for the question, sports fan. We will address it again, as our conversation progresses. But I think Surya, again, one of the points you brought in, earlier was the whole aspect that India is heavily dependent on Abhishek Sharma to, give those starts. In fact, I think I was watching the pre-match broadcast when the South Africa series was happening, and they were talking about how every time, Abhishek Sharma scores more than 30, India has like what 90% chance of winning a match, right? Again, this is just a stat they were sort of throwing up. But then it again sort of brought this aspect in my mind that when you look at the squad, the composition at large, the complexion itself, right? You can see there's a clear insistence on, sort of prioritizing power and flexibility. You don't have a lot of conventional anchors, which say the 2024 T20 World Cup side had. Now, this is a World Cup that's happening at home in the subcontinent, which can potentially call for players like that. So again, like, how do you kind of balance this situation out? Because the squad just has so many like power hitters. Do we still have batters who can adapt to the conditions? Say, the conditions can get really challenging.
I think they most certainly can because once again we saw the evidence of that in the Asia Cup, and I understand that probably India were a bit too good for the teams that turned up in the Asia Cup, and if they're going to be playing teams like Australia, England, South Africa, and my dark horse for this World Cup, which is New Zealand, I think that it could be a little more challenging. But in saying that, I do feel India have players who can anchor the innings. Now the thing is. There's a tendency to pigeonhole certain players as anchor players alone when they can also play at a high strike rate, or for that matter, power hitters only as power hitters, and that they cannot probably shift gears. Perhaps India wanted Gill to play that role, which say you've associated with Virat Kohli doing for multiple years now. But if you see, Virat Kohli is playing an aggressive brand of cricket anyway. In the IPL, he's been doing it for the last 2 to 3 years now. And in one-day internationals, I think you know something has ignited a spark in him, and he's gone back in time. But I don't see why Tilak cannot play that anchor role, so to say. Sanju Samson can do it. He definitely can switch gears and take it down by a notch or two when required. And Surya Kumar can most certainly do it himself, or Hardik Pandya can do it too. So these guys have the ability to do that. The incentive on power, it is a reflection of changing times. Now, we're just seeing 230 being put up and teams threatening to chase it down. And the pitches have also flattened out a lot. You look at the venues that India will be playing at. Outside Colombo, where they'll be playing Pakistan, uh, Wankhede is known to be run conducive. Ahmedabad should be pretty batting friendly. That's a fantastic outfield. We saw them post 230, and South Africa threatened to chase it down at the halfway mark. They were actually ahead of the chase. Eden Gardens, the fastest outfield I've ever seen. And again, if the ball comes on nicely, full value for runs. And then you've got Delhi short boundaries. Depends on what kind of pitch is rolled out, but at least if it's a fresh wicket, then it's going to be run batting friendly. And contrary to perception, even Chepauk has flattened out in the last 3 years. We've seen that in the IPL too. Unless there's a lot of wear and tear, Chepauk has flattened out too. And even otherwise, even if you're talking about a deck with a bit of hold or tack in it, you need about 170, 180 at least. Gone are the days where you can post 150, 160 and win on those surfaces. So, and even on such decks, it's power that really helps to clear the ropes. And when you need to manufacture that pace, you need to manufacture that power when you do not have the pace to work with because of the pitch. So that shift is understandable. It's because the sport has moved in that direction, and you've had to pivot along with it too. So I think India do have players who can uh, steady the innings if required, but I can understand why they've moved towards this combination and they backed it, and they played across conditions and got results too. So you've got to show conviction in that, no matter what the event is, and they made a very conscious effort to do this even in 50 over cricket. I think post that T20 World Cup 2022 semi-final in Adelaide when India lost to England, I think we've seen a different sort of philosophy in a sense. It started with Rohit Sharma as the captain, and I think Surya Kumar Yadav and company have taken it forward too.
Yeah, fair point there, Surya. I think the team management really trusts this, core group to sort of wade them through, stormy waters in case things really end up going south. But I think because, you mentioned that your dark horse for this World Cup is New Zealand. I think Utsav, being the curious person he is, asks us, do you see any associate nations surprising this time around as well? Because some very interesting qualifications, right? Italy being like right up there, I'm sure, like them qualifying would be a bit too much. But then again, over to you. Like any associate nations that you're looking forward to seeing?
I mean, anything can happen in the World Cup. To be very honest, I'm very, very interested to see how the USA go again on the back of what we saw last time. They secured a direct entry, and they've got players now who have also played in the ILT20 heading into this World Cup. So that experience on subcontinental decks is something that will serve them pretty well. And of course, they've got players who really hail from the subcontinent and have kind of shifted there too. So that knowledge would probably help them a fair bit as well. So I think that is a team to watch out for. That's what I personally say right now, at least. But look, even if you're going to look at teams probably springing a surprise and going through to the next phase, it could be one team at best because the way the groupings are, look, you've got to upset one of the big fish. If upset can be the right word over here. I think Nepal were brilliant. I think that is again another team. They nearly beat South Africa last time. They recently beat the West Indies. So actually, I'd say I put Nepal ahead, and then I'd talk about the USA. But yeah, definitely a lot to look forward to from them. But I do believe that when you're playing in India and Sri Lanka, the conditions, how you adapt quickly becomes important, and it holds true for the big teams too. And of course, uh, the first timers or say the associate nations don't really have a whole lot to lose, so they will play with minimum pressure, but and that could perhaps just liberate them. But I still feel that it's not going to be all that easy this time around, in these conditions.
And yeah, ideally, that's how you'd kind of want a World Cup to be, right? As many teams as possible participating, and there being, if not like parity, but at least some level of competitiveness. You don't want like the big three or like the top tier nations just running away with honor. So let's see, how the World Cup sort of unfolds. But again, just coming back to the captaincy aspect, before we break down each department, I think the most criticized player right now, trolled unfortunately, is Suryakumar Yadav, right? Him being chosen as skipper, him being selected in spite of his very lean patch where he's just not able to purchase any runs. Again, Surya, over to you. Like, what have you made of his form? Like, just the kind of slump that he's going to, and if India eventually does end up like going on to win the World Cup, do you think this is going to define his success as a leader, and India will look at a post Suryakumar Yadav era?
Look, I won't rule the possibility out of India looking beyond Surya Kumar Yadav after this World Cup because this regime and this selection panel has not shied away from making tough decisions. Shubman Gill, who's your captain in two other formats, has been dropped from a third format, and why he was picked in the squad and backed. So I can't think of another instance where it's really happened with an Indian captain, at least. So they don't shy away from making those tough calls. And I mean, take Rohit Sharma, for instance, a phenomenal white ball captain, phenomenal record, but playing just a one format, looking ahead to 2027, in the better interest of, say, the future and perhaps not leaving it too late should it come down to that. They decided to give Shubman Gill the captaincy ahead of Rohit Sharma in one dayers, and that's a big call again. Not at all easy because Rohit is one of the most successful white ball captains that India have had. So they don't shy away from making tough calls. And Surya Kumar is 35. And is there another T20 World Cup? I mean, look, if he has a good IPL once again, which I guess he could, it could very well be on. But I think the best case scenario for Surya in that case is to score runs this World Cup and hold that World Cup aloft. If he ticks off both these boxes, he's giving himself the best chance. If one of those do not happen, we could be looking at the selectors perhaps giving this some thought. But look, as a leader, let's not shy away from the fact that he has led this team brilliantly. I know his win percentage. I'm not going to look into all of that because it's phenomenal. But you can't just judge a leader on the basis of win percentage because there are 10 other players in the team. So team sport can't be defined only on the basis of that or captaincy in particular. You've got to look at intangibles, and I think he's used his resources really well. I know that the Indian team has been a bit of an experimentation laboratory, if I may say so, in the Asia Cup and even recently with the number three spot. But overall, I think Surya has done a good job. He's used his resources well, and he's backed his players. And tactically, I don't see much off. So he looks at ease. And one more thing, I just like to point out one thing about Surya. My mind goes back to the 2023 World Cup. I think Surya became the villain of the country after the final. 4 days later, he was player of the match in Vizag when India won that first T20 against Australia. He had a big smile on his face in the presentation. For someone who was chastised and trolled, of course, I think it's just the fact that he's had to work so hard to get here. He's probably just taken every day in his cricketing career as a blessing, and that's probably brought the best out of him. But he had his held high. He held his head high rather, and bad slip of the tongue there. But and he still performed as well as he often does in T20 cricket. And I just feel he's someone who will be feeling the pressure, but he's not going to let it get to him a whole deal. And I know that there's this talk that his numbers are plummeted ever since he's become captain. I see it as a correlation, not a causation. You're talking of a 35-year-old whose hand-eye coordination is bound to have declined. I thought he batted very well in Australia without getting the big scores. So I'm hoping that he saved his best for this World Cup. And look, I'll just say one thing: if Surya Kumar Yadav has a big World Cup, good luck stopping India from winning the World Cup.
That's a very bold call there, Surya, and we would hope that Sky does end up pulling off something really magical, right? Really missed seeing the big ones coming from him in India colours. Although his form, in the IPL was quite impressive, like he's able to rake in those big scores. And when we look at the leadership structure itself, right, you still have someone like an Akshar Patel who has been elevated as vice captain. You can clearly see the team management rates him so highly, right? But again, both just tactically on the field and in managing game situations. How do you see Akshar Patel just, figuring in that scheme of thing?
Look, I think he's really earned this opportunity because he was, of course, the vice captain when India played England earlier this year in January. And I think he's earned that go because he's first up a sure starter in the playing 11. And I think the think tank has really warmed up to Akshar Patel on the back of what he did in that World Cup as well last year in USA 2024. Yeah, it was last year. I'm losing track of time a little bit now. It's just got so much cricket happening in the West Indies and the USA, and of course the Champions Trophy too. So he's really earned it. I thought he led Delhi Capitals all right in the IPL too, and you just feel that he's the kind of leader who will keep the team together. Very, very similar to Surya Kumar Yadav. There's this theory that perhaps your captain and your vice captain need to complement each other, but Surya and Akshar seem to be along a similar, uh, a similar wavelength in terms of characters and in terms of just how measured and composed they seem to be. So I think it's a great opportunity for him, and I don't see him being faced by it. And a year at the helm of an IPL side should definitely help him as well to be able to handle that. And he will be of invaluable support to Surya Kumar Yadav on the field too. And definitely, one of the senior statesmen and a leader in this side. So very excited and very happy for him. Whether he's your next T20 captain or not, I mean, I think that's something that time will bear an answer to. India could go elsewhere as well, but let's see how that goes when it comes by. But right now, yeah, pretty pleased for Akshar and hope he has another good World Cup campaign.
Yeah, I think as optimistic fans, we will hope that he has a great campaign and, stepping up as vice captain really again brings out the best in him. which sort of makes me want to throw light on the whole aspect of the omission, right, of Shubman Gill, which was obviously like such a massive talking point, has dominated conversations everywhere. Again, Surya, for you, when you look at this decision, right, was this just purely because of the team combination, or do you just think it was kind of signaling a shift in the way the team management was thinking about T20 selection? It is a World Cup. It is so much more important, and sort of force fitting Shubman Gill just wouldn't really make sense.
I think they may not admit it openly, but I think they've just realized that they got this one wrong, and they've made the call before it's too late. I'm not saying Shubman Gill would not have had a good World Cup. Look, he is too bloody good a batter to not be scoring runs in T20 cricket. We've seen it in the IPL too. I don't know why it's not worked out, to be honest. Is it the tempo? Is he trying to force the issue a little early, and is he not fitting into the style of cricket that India are probably trying to play? Because his strike rates have been very good in the IPL too. So I don't see why he could not have done it. And he's a class act. There's absolutely no denying that. So it's actually a puzzling question as to why he's not been able to do it in T20 cricket. But look, they did try to shoehorn him because they were looking at him as an all-format captain. Again, they may not necessarily admit it openly, but we are in 2025, we're entering 2026. Gone are the days of all format captains. I hope India wake up to that, because there is not a single test playing team that has one captain across formats. Not Afghanistan, not Zimbabwe, not Ireland. I'm not even getting to the teams that play the WTC. But even these three teams have different captains, at least two captains. You need to warm up to it. I don't see what's the harm in having two captains. I mean, when Virat Kohli led India and for the first 2 years as Test captain, Dhoni was still India's white ball captain. I think the dynamics were absolutely fine. So, and you saw that later as well with Rohit and Sky, or for that matter, with Shubman Gill and Sky right now. So I don't see any issue in having multiple captains, because you're playing so much cricket. And I did worry for Shubman Gill too, because you play the Asia Cup final, you then 4 days later you're captaining India in a test. Once that test series is done, 5 days later you're captaining India in Perth. After the Australia tour is done, 6 days later you're at Eden Gardens as the captain. So we've not considered Shubman Gill's workload one bit. And the kind of cricket, the volume of cricket that's being played today, look, you have to pick and choose. You cannot have one captain for three formats. But coming to I think the decision around Gill, I do wonder. They did admit, of course, that they wanted to look at a wicket keeper who could double up as an opener, and that one of the openers had to keep wickets. They may not, again, as I said, openly admit it, but had Shubman Gill been in form and scored runs, where would they have gone? Because in that case, maybe Jitesh should have become your wicketkeeper, because Sanju Samson wasn't fitting into the middle order. Then who's your backup keeper? What if Jitesh starts and you have Sanju in the team? Now, if something happens to Jitesh, whom do you bring in? There's no middle order wicketkeeper batter or repute. Do you bring Dhruv Jurel in out of the wilderness? And I mean, if wilderness is the right term, and keep Sanju Samson out. Can't imagine the uproar that would have probably unfolded had Sanju Samson been left out of India's T20 World Cup squad. But had Gill fired, I don't know if this would have happened. So I just feel it comes down to the fact that they have internally understood that they got this wrong, trying to shoehorn Shubman Gill. And, you know, and it was keeping in mind leadership, because if you're talking purely batting, again, he's too good a player. But for this format, I think there might have been one or two others who may have potentially been higher up or should have been higher in the pecking order.
Yeah, I think it just definitely brings in a lot of questions, and I think I still felt like a move in the right direction. I think Shubman Gill is definitely still young, so he can work his way back into that T20 side. Again, doesn't really have to be pushed across all formats. Let him just do either of the formats or all of them like perfectly. And anyways, not just force him to do stuff. We have a couple of questions though in our chat. Sports fan goes on to ask us, was Jaiswal the most deserving outside of this 15 who has been left out of the squad? So Surya, you could probably answer this question and bring up any other names you thought could have potentially made the cut, but unfortunately, yeah, the squad size is just 15, so I'm not sure how many we can take there.
Without an iota of doubt, it's Jaiswal. Because, as I said, there might have been one or two others who would have probably or should have been higher up the pecking order for that second opener's role or the backup batter's role, whichever way you look at it, ahead of Gill. I just do not see how Jaiswal is not making this squad. Uh, that befuddles me. Yes, right now you can argue that they've gone for Ishan Kishan as the wicket keeping backup. Fair enough, but my point of argument is that Jaiswal should have been there right from the start of the Asia Cup, and he was your backup opener in the last World Cup to Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli. So how has he suddenly slipped away is beyond me. He had a fantastic IPL season once again, so I cannot agree more. Jaiswal had to be there. Another player who I think India could have potentially looked at developing, I think they would have. Um, if not for certain fitness issues, perhaps he didn't bowl in the side Mushtaq Ali too. I think he's got an injury, and that's Riyan Parag, because I think Riyan Parag would really fit well. He'd solve a lot of problems in terms of being that batting all rounder, who's high quality with the bat and also gives you very good overs of spin. And he probably fits in a little better than some of the other players there in terms of the batting order. So that's my personal take. I don't know if he would have made the 15, but probably it was worth a try, and they may have if he was fit, but fitness issues were a concern. Outside that, the one player again who I really feel sorry for is Jitesh Sharma, because you brought him back on the back of a brilliant IPL. He's got his limitations too. Hard length. It's very simple. You just bombard him with that hard length. I know he's upped his range. He's playing those sweeps. Working with Dinesh Karthik has very clearly helped. He's playing the ramps and the laps and trying all sorts of. He's unlocked a new dimension to his game. But he finds a way. And Jitesh also seems like that kind of player who's really up for a fight and who can really thrive under pressure. And once again, I don't see why he couldn't have been there as a specialist batter. You might ask me in place of whom. But look, if you didn't pick Rinku Singh in the Asia Cup 11 and you dropped him for the series against South Africa, so again, it doesn't necessarily reflect of clarity, because if you were very sure of Rinku Singh, you would have probably been playing him regularly. But yeah, Jitesh, my heart goes out to him. I think he's definitely got a rough deal. But again, Jitesh, Jaiswal, whichever player it is, I guess the only thing you can say is keep scoring runs. You've got an example in Shafali Verma as to what happened at the World Cup. So you just never know when an SOS call up might come by. And you don't want anyone to be injured. But if it comes down to it, just be ready. I guess that's just about all you can do.
Yeah, I think obviously you wouldn't want a situation where injuries just come up, but hoping against hope that these guys do get opportunities at least going ahead. If not this World Cup, there are ample opportunities to sort of stamp their authority and break that selection door down. So fingers crossed for the ones who missed out this time. And Sportsman also goes on to say that don't think this, vice captain title means anything. Otherwise, Hardik was the most deserving one next in line for leadership as well. Again, Surya, just quickly, let's get your thoughts on this, right? The whole vice captain aspect. I can't think of a lot of other sports, which kind of gives so much preference to like a vice captain per se, but cricket, clearly puts it right up there. But do you think like in the hierarchy, like Hardik Pandya slightly up there, or like was Akshat Patel always like the underrated gem that the team management just got up and realized?
I mean, I always thought Hardik could take over from Rohit too, because he was the vice captain of the T20 World Cup, and prior to that, he was leading India consistently in T20s. You almost thought that he was the captain, so full time in that role. So obviously, they went in a different direction, and Surya Kumar has done a great job. Obviously, the captain coach dynamic also comes into play. There are different factors over here, and I think Gambhir and Surya Kumar very clearly are in sync, and it's worked really well in this format. Look, in terms of deserving, there are a lot of candidates. I mean, Jasprit Bumrah, purely if you're looking at vice captain for one World Cup, then why not? Bumrah is another option too. I mean, I know he's not leading in Test cricket, for instance, because of his workload, but he's going to play every match of the World Cup more or less. Why not have him as well? So he's another option. I think this can go on, and you can always bring out pros and cons of having X or Y as captain or as the vice captain. But there's a stable leadership at the top, and I think that's the good thing. And now that they've gone in with this, you just hope that it comes off and there's another successful campaign.
Yeah, and I think as fans and onlookers, it's best, sort of back this team to the hilt and just
Absolutely.
hope, things really come
I
out
mean, we weren't
well.
very happy with the team that went to the 2024 World Cup, and look what happened. I mean, I'll be frank, I had certain issues with the team myself. We recorded a podcast as well, and I wasn't very convinced myself, even though I knew they'd make the semi-finals. But what transpired was completely different, and they proved us all wrong. And I couldn't be happier that they proved me wrong, with regards to certain things. And yeah, I mean, sometimes if it's destined and it's meant to be as well, it just comes together. And obviously, you need to look at your processes. And I think India have done most things right, if not everything right, leading into this. So can't really complain a whole deal.
Yeah, I think we wouldn't really fault the selectors for their rationale and mindset while selecting this team at large. And there's always going to be a bunch of fans or a bunch of us who'll be disappointed, like this could have been better or that. But again, Surya, let's just probably look at the batting department side of things. Right, we've already spoken about Abhishek Sharma and Sanju Samson, who will be opening. A very exciting proposition. And when you look at that middle order, right, you have the likes of Surya Kumar Yadav, along with the returning Rinku Singh, you have Tilak Verma, Hardik Pandya, Akshar Patel, Washington Sundar, Shivam Dubey. Just the number of options there, right? Who will largely comprise India's strong middle order, subject to like fitness and what is the type of team combination they want to opt for. And largely, it is going to be a batting heavy lineup. So again, like, what do you make of this batting order? And anyone in this batting order you think is best suited to sort of play that sort of a situational innings, when early wickets fall, and there is confidence, right, in this batting unit.
Definitely. I mean, as I said, the only issue is perhaps they've got one batter who will inevitably end up batting out of position and not get his preferred entry point. But again, I think playing the situation, if you are in early trouble, I think that role has gone to Akshar Patel. So much so they batted him at number 3 when they lost an early wicket in Mulanpur. That probably took the cake as far as India's rotation policy with that number 3 role was concerned. But that needs to stop. And I think it looks like Tilak Verma is going to bat at 3 with Sky at 4. And if you're going with that, you've got to probably try and back that. And I understand left right is something that this management also likes, but never at the cost of having your best player for that situation. And a good player will survive against most matchups. So tactically, yes, you can take a call here and there, but I think they do have the players who can salvage a situation. I wouldn't mind India being put under pressure by New Zealand in the coming series because, let's say India batting first, Abhishek gets out early. How do they respond? That would be good prep for the World Cup because when they start well, I don't think India is going to be stopped. In order to stop India, you need to win the power play. Especially with the ball, you need to uh, stop them early on in the power play, stop those hitters in the power play. India's do have enough bowling cushion to come back even if they don't have a good power play. We saw that again in the Asia Cup final, when they didn't get a lot of wickets initially. But I think from a batting standpoint, how India cope if they lose early wickets um, when they're batting first and setting a total. It is probably something that I'd like to see a little more of, especially because, look, in most situations, you wouldn't worry if you've got Surya Kumar Yadav coming in because he's one of the best to have ever played this format. But because of his recent form, all these questions are surfacing, and you start to wonder if there are possibilities where India could find themselves in a spot of bother. Let's say you're playing Australia, Josh Hazelwood and Pat Cummins are running in against Abhishek Sharma, and they get him out. How do they respond? So that could be a bit of a tricky situation. But look, if you're fixated on Tilak as your number 3, just back him. And I think he's a better batter when he takes time, he's set, and he has the power play as well to play some expansive shots. And then he becomes a much tougher batter to bowl to. Even in the IPL, we saw whenever MI sent up Will Jacks at number 3 and then had Sky at 4, and Tilak came in much later, he just wasn't the same. So I think you probably want him higher up the order in that case. So I think they'll have to back that. They'll definitely have to show conviction in terms of what they pick. Yes, batting orders after a point are overrated. It's not something that I know that it's become the butt of a number of jokes. It's a statement that a lot of players or coaches have said it. I think Gambhir has said that, Pat Cummins has said that. But look, you have to be flexible, but at the same time, there has to be some level of stability too. Now, if the openers get off to a great start, let's say you're 120 in 10 overs, and then your first wicket falls, and you see, hey, you know what, this is an opportunity to really double the score. Let's send Hardik Pandya 3. Absolutely the right call. Give him 10 overs. Imagine where that score can go. So that definitely makes sense. But if you're losing a wicket in the first over, you can't be sending Akshar Patel up the order. So your number 3 has to be prepared to walk in right from the second ball of the innings. That is the role of a number 3. He's got to be ready. So if Tilak is your man, you back him. And even if you lose a wicket early, send him out there, get yourself ready for that World Cup. You'll have, I think, what, two warm-ups, five T20s. That's good prep. Put yourselves in different situations which can probably get you better prepared when the big games come by.
Yeah, I think all valid points there, Surya. The batting department, all in all, is shaping up really well. There's just so many options that India can leverage and use. There's just like so many resources there, right? And looking again just briefly at the bowling attack side of things, we obviously have Jasprit Bumrah who will be leading that bowling attack. You have the likes of Arshdeep Singh, Harshit Rana, and Hardik Pandya as well, who will make up that pace battery. And again, looking at the spin department, you have Kuldeep Yadav, Akshar Patel, Washington Sundar, and Varun Chakravarti, right? So, like, what do you make of India's bowling attack side of things? Do you think there's like clear, defined roles for like the power play, middle overs, death, or do you think there'll be like a little bit of an overlap?
It's gotten better in the last couple of series, I'd say, and the reason is they're not bowling three of Bumrah on the power play, and thankfully not. They started doing that when they did not have Ashdeep Singh and they had to bowl, I think, Hardik and Bumrah with the new ball. I did not get the point of bowling Bumrah three up front because you do not have that cushion for the depth there. With Arshdeep, yes, some days you might want to front load with Bumrah, but you at least have Arshdeep to bowl at the back end. But with Arshdeep coming in and taking the new ball, I think that's taken care of itself. And of course, you have Hardik who can take the new ball on certain days too. So, and you've got someone like Varun Chakravarti who can bowl just about anywhere. So, those 8 overs of Varun Chakravarti and Jasprit Bumrah are absolute gold. And if you play Kuldeep Yadav on certain days too, that's 12 overs of cheat code, if I can put it that way, because it's really, I don't see any other team having this kind of cheat code bowling to really turn towards. So, I think the bowling ticks off most boxes. I think it's a lot clearer in terms of the phases in which they operate. And because you've got so many bowlers who can bowl across phases, again, as I said, Arshdeep, Bumrah, Varun, Hardik can cover the power play in the middle. He can give you an over at the death if you need. Kuldeep covers the middle and the death overs. There's Harshit Rana, of course, who's the backup pacer, and he can come in and do a job across faces once again. Akshar Patel can bowl with the new ball and in the middle overs, and Akshar's bowling since Asia Cup has been outstanding. So I think they've definitely covered a lot of boxes, and in between on select pitches, I think Shivam Dubey will be useful too. It's a question of how you use him once again, because you ideally want Shivam Dubey to give you 2 overs in the middle. Anything else is a bonus, but you don't want him to be bowling too many at the death. But looks like he's upped his pace a little bit. He's bowling the Yorker too. So there's some very good work going in over there. He's really improved on his bowling. So don't think there's a lot you can complain about. The question is if you need to summon someone from outside the squad, who comes in? I don't see an outright choice for a wrist spinner right now because Bishnoi is kind of gone off the boil, even though he played against England earlier this year. Chahal's been out of the reckoning for a while too. So I don't see that backup wrist spinner. Outside the squad, if you need to get someone in, is what I'm saying. But in the squad, I mean, Varun, Kuldeep, it really can't get better than that.
Yeah, and again, here, like, how crucial do you think, right, will be just Bumrah's fitness and the workload management side of things, right? I think workload management is a word that's just been thrown around so much because when you look at how important Bumrah is to India, like, I think India's bowling plans too, right, across the tournament will largely hinge on him. So, Surya, again, do you see him featuring in all the matches, like, without any problem, or maybe for the I don't know. For the lack of a better phrase, I'm going to say not so competitive teams. We'd probably see India, mix and match a little bit.
It's possible, especially if they seal their spot in the Super 8s. It's definitely possible that India make a change or two. I think the first two games they'll go full strength for sure. The first game I think is against the USA in Mumbai, and then they go to Colombo to play Pakistan. So we'll see a full strength squad there. And if probably after the third game, if they've sealed their spot in the next round, which you think would happen, maybe they rest Bumrah for a game. You saw that again in the Asia Cup too, where I think they had to play 2 games in 3 days, and it was very humid in Dubai. So Bumrah and somebody else, was it Varun or Kuldeep? It's for some reason I'm not able to place my finger to that, but they got Ashdeep into the playing 11 at that point of time, and even 2 days before the final, I think that super over game against Sri Lanka, they made those changes too. So I'm at the most I see him sitting out only one game, the last game of the group stage if your qualification sealed. Because once you get to the Super 8s, even if you win the first two and seal your semi-final berth, and the third one is a dead rubber, so to say, you would have got to a stage in the tournament where you do not want to change your combination and you just want to go with that winning combination. So I think at most Bumrah sits out one game. Otherwise, he's going to play everything else. And look, I don't be surprised if he doesn't play the ODIs against New Zealand again, and if he's rested, and then he plays the 5 match series, maybe he sits out one of those games. And in fact, I'd really want India to do the same with Hardik Pandya as well. Don't pick him for the ODIs. Just keep him fresh, get him on from the T20s. You played him in that dead rubber against Sri Lanka in the Asia Cup. He pulled up with an injury, and you didn't have him in the final. So when there's a chance, definitely look after them. I know that there's a lot of outrage at times, but look at what Pat Cummins has done again. He's come and played one test match and he said, "Thank you very much. We won the Ashes. I'm going to step back and I'm not going to risk my body." And it makes so much sense. Jofra Archer didn't play the last test against India at the Oval because England knew they had to wrap him up in cotton wool. So I know this is T20 cricket, only 4 overs, but again, if there is a chance, it's not a crime to really look after the workload of your players. I mean, if one of your star batters and your captain in two formats and Shubman Gill can pick up an injury, then you can only imagine the amount of load that goes into the bodies of, say, a Bumrah or a Hardik Pandya. So just handle them with care, because if they have great campaigns again, it's going to be very difficult to stop India.
Yeah, I think Bumrah is undeniably India's X factor heading into this World Cup as fans, and I think just onlookers too, right? You'd want to ideally see him play all the matches, but it is important to take into cognizance that he's a bowler at the end of the day. Their bodies end up breaking down a lot easier than, say, a batter. So, again, just curious to see how India does manage his workload during such an important tournament like the World Cup. And so far, Surya, we have comprehensively looked at the batting and the bowling department side of things. But again, just a common set of questions that I sort of had when I was conceptualizing this episode was, there's just like an infusion of younger names in the squad, right? So according to you, like, who carries like that big responsibility to deliver for India rather than just have that future prospect tag? Like, are you earmarking anyone for success like that?
I don't know about earmarking him for success, which I think he's already had, and I do see him having a good World Cup as well. But in terms of responsibility to go with it and the importance of this player, I cannot look beyond Abhishek Sharma, because Abhishek Sharma is one of the premier T20 batters on the planet right now. There is no denying that. Uh, I see him with the ICC Men's T20 Player of the Year award next month. I will not be surprised if it goes to him. I think he's earned it. He's had a phenomenal year, and it's just his ability. There are some players who really have this ability to set the game up and pretty much demoralize an opposition in the power play. Abhishek is one such player. Phil Salt of England is another player. Travis Head. Uh, you just see the way they take off and really put the opposition under pressure and rattle them, so to say, unsettle them completely. The captain's plans are all over the place, helter skelter, wondering what do you do right now. So he is very, very important to India's chances. At the start of the year, ahead of the series against England, I was skeptical about Abhishek because I thought he had issues against deliveries bowled into the pitch above 145 kilometers an hour. I think he still got a few issues like that. You saw that against Hazelwood in Australia. But I thought Bryden Cast, Jofra Archer, Mark Wood would probably really give him a tough time in the series. He walked away as the player of the series, showing a different sort of dimension to his game in terms of how he's worked on the space game. And he's just been ridiculously good. So I cannot look beyond Abhishek Sharma because he needs to set the game for India. And in the context of Surya Kumar Yadav's struggling form right now, it's all the more important that he does that. It should be good, him rekindling that partnership with Sanju Samson at the top. And if that goes well, then I think it'll certainly augur pretty well for India. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does in this campaign. I mean, we had one Sharma obviously giving India those quick starts. I think it's pretty fitting that another one also does the same and sustains it and scores big.
Completely agree with you on that one. In fact, when you were just just mentioning who this player could be, I'd already said it was Abhishek Sharma because I think he's just been in that sort of monstrous form, right? I just hope he can carry on the momentum to such an important assignment like the World Cup too, and just inspire the next generation of cricketers who absolutely look up to him. I mean, his own idol is Yuvraj Singh, right? And his mentor and coach as well. So yeah, I think it would be a very fitting tribute, if Abhishek Sharma can do something really magical this World Cup. At least we'll keep our fingers crossed for that. But Surya, so far again, right? We have again spoken about all things taken into account. But how does that ideal playing 11 shape for you, right? I know each match brings up different conditions and all of that. But then, have you like given a brief thought about how your playing 11, an ideal one, can look like?
Yes, I've given this some thought, and I do feel that there are probably 9 to 10 spots that are locked in, and probably one spot that India need to make a decision about. So Abhishek Sharma and Sanju Samson will open. Samson takes the gloves. Tilak Varma at three, going by what Surya Kumar mentioned in the press conference, which means Surya himself bats at four. Now, 5 to 8 in no particular order. I think it's going to be very flexible. You'll have Akshar Patel, Hardik Pandya, Shivam Dubey, and Rinku Singh. So you could even have Rinku Singh at 8, but that's the finisher's role anyway. And here you've covered overs. Hardik Pandya, Akshar Patel, Shivam Dubey, Abhishek can roll his arm over if required. So you've covered a lot of overs there. And then the last three, which, I mean, Bumrah and Varun Chakravarti, no brainers. The toss up, a very, very difficult toss up is between Kuldeep Yadav and Arshdeep Singh. They played Kuldeep in the Asia Cup. He picked up the most wickets in that tournament. But in recent times, since the Australia tour, I think, or midway through that Australia tour, they've pivoted back to Arshdeep. And he's been setting up games in the power play again. Player of the match in Hobart, player of the match in Dharamshala as well for that new ball spell. And even in the first T20, which they played in Cuttack, he struck early. And that's the thing. When Arshdeep comes in, the maneuverability of your options is far different. You don't have to front load Bumrah. You don't have to worry about who handles the middle overs if Bumrah is going to be backloaded for the death. So Arshdeep really gives you that, which is why I think he'll make the cut ahead of Kuldeep. If they're going to be playing on a real sluggish pitch where Kuldeep becomes a must, then he probably comes in ahead of Arshdeep. But I think there's a lot of advantage to having Arshdeep Singh in that 11. In an ideal scenario, you'd want all of them to play Kuldeep, Arshdeep, Bumrah, and Varun Chakravarti. But India obviously want to bat deep, and it's understandable. You want that depth in T20 cricket. And I do feel that they've made this combination in such a way that they give themselves the choice of Rinku or Washington Sundar when the day comes. So if you want another spinner, again, as I said, while retaining Arshdeep, now Kuldeep, I feel, is a better bowler. But if you feel that you've got those options anyway in terms of quality in your attack who can take care of it on a given day, then why not bring in someone who can lend a little more with the bat? So Washington does that. He's really worked on the space hitting. So I hope they don't promote him up the order in the middle overs, because I think his spin hitting is a work in progress, and you've got Akshar and Dubey to do that anyway. So use Washington Sundar to tackle pace. But I won't be surprised if Washington plays ahead of Rinku in Colombo against Pakistan. So I see that happening. But more or less, I think the combination will have Rinku starting and Arshdeep starting. So to answer one of our users, comments, I think sports fans comments, the one I see starting is Rinku, and I think Kuldeep might just have to wait for the moment. And Kuldeep might just be the best player in the T20 World Cup who's not able to get into the 11. Dare I say?
Yeah, I mean, as unfortunate as that sounds, that has been the case for Kuldeep, right? I mean, through the course of his career, every single time we feel like, yeah, he's reached the peak of his prowess. He just doesn't end up finding a place in that team because of just how competitive it is, or how the team combination is just not favoring him largely. And one last bit, Surya, before we obviously conclude, is again, when you look at India, like, do you think this is a team that's just absolutely meant to dominate this tournament? Because taking into account how the other teams are still, in that little bit of a tricky like transition phase, or they just don't feel like they're on par with say a team like India. And yeah, would you be bold enough to make a prediction as well as to how deep and far India might go in this tournament?
I'm very tempted to say they're going all the way because they really have that squad. I'm tempted to say that, but look, when it comes to the big games, again, you need some luck. You need things to fall in your favor. Sometimes, if it's a very dewy day, the toss could end up deciding your fate too. I do believe that India and Australia are comfortably ahead of the rest of the teams, and one advantage India have over any other solid contender is knowledge of conditions. So that is where India have a definitive edge. I know that history suggests that a home team has not won a World Cup, a T20 World Cup, or you know, no team has ever defended its men's T20 World Cup final. But look, I mean, it's history for a reason. You try and change that, so I don't see why India cannot do it. And I'll just say what I said at the start of the episode as well, that I think this is probably the best chance any team has ever had to be able to defend their title and win a World Cup at home. So I see it happening. If they do not make the semifinals, it's going to be a major, major upset. Something would have to go terribly wrong in the Super 8s for India to not be in the semifinals. And after that as well, I can almost picture another India Australia final at Ahmedabad. But again, without bringing back certain haunted memories, I'm just going to say watch out also for New Zealand, because they just know how to get the job done. I know England look a more dangerous team, South Africa have more dangerous batters, but overall, in terms of the combination with their bowling, I think New Zealand look better, and um, they have their share of match winners as well. So that's a team to definitely watch out for, and they do their basics right. And England especially, I think, have issues when it comes to playing spin in the subcontinent. So I really think that the gulf between, I mean, when you think of it, India's squad can actually even be better in certain aspects. And if some of their players can really tackle quality bowling a lot better, then they'll be in better position too. But yeah, I mean, considering their form, the way they're going, the knowledge of conditions, the combination, just the flexibility they have, this is, I mean, they are one of, if not the red hot favorites to win the tournament. uh, Favorites don't necessarily go on to win the tournament altogether, but um, again, I expect India to go deep enough. And as I said, if they do not make the semi-finals, I mean, I can just stick my neck out and say, you know what, they're winning the tournament, and I won't be one bit surprised if they do win the tournament. But if the wheels come off in the Super 8 for whatever reason it is, it would be a major, major, major upset, is what I believe, because that's how good the team is actually constructed.
Yeah, I mean, Surya has logged in his predictions there, and I too, foresee like a possible India-Australia final, somehow just happening, and India, pulling off the magical thing. But then again, let's not get ahead of ourselves there. And one last comment from Utsav as well, which goes on to say, I just hope Dew doesn't play spoil sport like it did in 2021, because our toss winning skills are top notch. So, yeah, got to take
Well,
that into account.
maybe just maybe the tide will change this time, because Surya Kumar has won tosses better than Gill or KL Rahul or Rishabh Pant for that matter. And well, Harmanpreet has started winning tosses now. So maybe you never know. 2026 is the year India end up winning a lot of tosses. So yeah, who's to say? But yeah, you do not want that to become a major factor. In T20 cricket, I think it should not necessarily be too big a factor, because it's a short time span you're talking about anyway. But yeah, you'd hope that it doesn't come down to that. The 2021 World Cup, the start time also was off. I mean, you started at what, 6 p.m. local time there in Dubai. So by the time the dew set in, it became a second innings game altogether. In India, it may not necessarily be the case. 7 p.m. start, I I don't think it'll make too much of an impact. And look, if there's dew from the beginning, then it's fine. It kind of evens it out, and you know that you've got to go hard anyway. So yeah, I don't see it being too much of a factor, and I at least hope that it isn't. Even though some grounds like Ahmedabad, uh, Chepauk too, I mean, can be very dewy, but that's in April. Feb, March, not so sure about it. March, actually, I've not seen a lot of dew in Chepauk, so may not make too much of a difference. But this whole concept of dew itself is a different sort of science altogether that we probably need to have another episode to discuss that alone altogether, and understand the dynamics of how that works, because it's very unpredictable at times.
Yeah, I think as you rightly said, the biomechanics and how something as small as this, right, the variable of dew can actually have such a big impact in the match outcomes. But yeah, we'll keep our fingers crossed that, dew doesn't play that much of a role. But yeah, folks, I think that pretty much does conclude our discussion as well. First things first, thank you so much, Surya, for joining me on the podcast today. I think this 1 hour was really fun. We very thoroughly looked at India squad, broke down almost all of the aspects that were there, and all of the hot topics and debates as well. And to all of our followers, subscribers who joined in, thank you so much for all your questions. And yeah, we will be doing a lot more of this. 2026, hopefully, turns out to be that year where we can sort of do things more consistently. So yeah, that's all, folks. Hope to see you in our next stream, and thank you so much. Good night. Bye.
Thank you, Neha. Bye bye.